Hello. Today's reflection is going to be discussing how to develop bodhicitta, which is really, really difficult because we're talking about, every single breath you take is dedicated to the goal of achieving enlightenment for all sentient beings. And for most of us, we're very, very busy people, and we've got other things that we have to think about. And it's really hard. Bodhicitta is also very rare. But what we can do is use these techniques to develop more compassion. And without compassion, we're not going to reach any great spiritual realizations. Compassion is the root of the path, helping all sentient beings from the Mahayana perspective. Must be something that fully saturates the main mind. So if when you look at somebody else and you see that they're suffering, if you immediately have a worry that they're going to ask you for some kind of help, we need to be doing some practice. If you help others and you're expecting them to even say thank you, then what you're worrying about there is a transaction. You're not really focusing on helping that sentient being experience happiness and be free from suffering. So one of the practices that we do to develop bodhicitta, and by the way, bodhicitta is, just so I can be clear, as defined by Maitreya as he dictated to Asanga in Asanga's Clear Ornament of Realizations, the Nunto Gyen, the Abhisamalamkara in Sanskrit, is Semkepani Jendunchir Yandat Zope Janshib, which means bodhicitta is the wish to achieve complete enlightenment, perfect complete enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. So yandak means perfect. Jangchub is the word we use for enlightenment, and enlightenment is an English word. Jang means to train, and chub means to finish. So Jangchub means to finish training. And so it is not being woke. It is being done. Meaning that when the term enlightenment is used, it only refers to Buddhas. Jangchub, finished training, means the fifth path, which is Milopnam, the path of no more learning. That's the state of a Buddha. So one of the meditations or contemplations that we do to try to develop our compassion, to try to develop bodhicitta, is called the 7-point cause and effect training. 7-point cause and effect method. And it starts with recalling all sentient beings thinking logically. If you can come to a point where you understand that rebirth is real, that the consciousness continues. However, when Mark dies, Mark is dead. It's gone. This is one moment in time where all of these parts have assembled and have created a mark. And when Mark dies, that current upon which all of these impressions that create the manifestations that make my body or my localized consciousness and make my environment, which is my non-localized consciousness, that continues. And those impressions continue. And so the things that we're trying to train as Buddhists to do is to put the right impressions on. So we have to have kind of a compassion for ourselves or our future self. It's the self that we're not going to see. There's some starlings flying through here. It's beautiful. So the first step is recalling that all sentient beings have been our mothers. If you come to that point where you realize that rebirth goes on and on and on, consciousness continues, then everyone that you come into contact with, everyone that you see, has been your mother in some previous lifetime. The starlings that are flying through here and hopefully eating the mosquitoes have been my mother at one point, and I've been theirs. And so this is called marche. Marche means to recall all sentient beings having been our mothers. And so we think about that, contemplate it, and we try to foster the same feeling towards all sentient beings that we have to our own living mother right now. Or, in my case, my mother's passed away. So I try to look at all of these creatures, the people that I come into contact with, and really, really try to see them as having had been my mother in a past lifetime. And so that means the next step, which is called Dren Dren. Dren means kindness. Dren means to think or remember. Remember their kindness. Dren Dren. So we remember the kindness of our mothers. They carried us in their womb for 9 months or however long, whatever creature we were when they were our mothers. And they sacrificed their own health. They had to go to great lengths to make sure that they got the right nutrition to be able to feed us. Then when we were born, they protected us. They wiped our backside. They bathed us. They were our protection. They were literally our protection. And so we think about those kind of kindnesses. And if you look in this lifetime, the kind, wonderful things that our mothers did, it's beautiful. I wrote a whole book about my mother and what she did for me, although it took this stubborn, hard-headed person to figure it out. But I can't possibly imagine this lifetime now looking back on all of the things that I learned from my mom and from my dad. So this is a beautiful contemplation, even of it by itself. These 7 points don't have to be done all in the same meditation. They don't all have to be done in the same contemplation. And incidentally, this type of meditation that we're doing is an analytical meditation. It's not a concentration. Your mind is going to be moving. Concentration, the mind stays still, stable. This one will be moving. So you're going to sit there and analyze and let your mind take this story and tear it apart and think of all sentient beings having been our mother. Then thinking about the kindnesses that they did for us. And this is what would be called a gom. In one of my earlier videos, we talked about that type of meditation, which is a familiarization. We're familiarizing ourselves with this information. We're habituating ourselves to think like this, to turn our minds towards all beings, all creatures, with this kind of softness. And then the next step, the third step, is called Jinso. So if we can recall the kindnesses that our mothers have done for us, the things that they did that were so kind, then Jin means kindness, so means to repay. So we want to repay their kindnesses. And this is where we really, really think about how important it is to repay the kindness to others. Well, not always just our parents, not just our mothers. Anyone who did anything kind to us, we need to repay this. Repay that kindness with gratitude, with, a similar action, and so on. One Lama said that all the good in the world is from kindness repaid, and all the evil is kindness unrepaid. So that's the difference between selfishness and consideration, or in Tibetan we'd say dakzin and drye. Drame is inconsiderate. So once these starlings are getting really close, by the way. Once we develop this wish to, repay their kindness, then the next step is called Yonjampa. Yonjampa means this beautiful love. We develop this love for them. And remember, love in the Buddhist context is the wish that others have happiness. So Yonjampa is really develop this wish that our mothers, all our mothers, have happiness. We want to repay their kindness, and then we also want them to have happiness. So we love them. And love is an action. Love is a verb. We do things that show that love. So this also, again, you can meditate on that one for, days and days and days. Each one of these points is very beautiful. And as you bring yourself to a new worldview, a new conclusion on each point, and it shifts your mind, it shifts your consciousness, it moves your heart. So then, logically, after we have decided that we've developed this wish that wants them to have happiness, then we should develop a wish that wants them to be free from suffering. That's compassion. And that's where the Tibetan word for compassion is nyingje. This step is called nyingje. Then we think about the different sufferings, great sufferings and small sufferings, those seen and unseen. And within suffering, you have 3 types of suffering. You have what's called the dungal gidungal, which is the suffering of suffering, and then suffering of suffering, suffering of change, and pervasive suffering. Suffering of suffering is physical suffering. It's the physical and mental suffering that we all experience. Suffering of change is how we attach ourselves to things and have a misguided idea of their ability to last, or we overestimate their staying power. And so when things do change, as they always will, then we suffer. And pervasive suffering are all these things that we do that we can't see that actually cause, our parts of the future suffering that we experience. So we develop this wish that our mothers be freed from suffering. Then, and this kind of compassion can extend on and on and on, because sentient beings are limitless. Our compassion can be limitless. There's compassion, great compassion, and holy great compassion. Compassion is just the feeling of, the wish that these people that I love and care about are free from suffering. Great compassion is thinking about all sentient beings and being free from suffering. Holy great compassion is that attitude that I have to be the one to free them from suffering. So that logically takes us to the sixth step, which is called Laksam Namdak in Tibetan. Laksam means a special thought, an extraordinary thought. Namdak means pure. So this is a totally pure thought. Laksam Namdak. There we think about the responsibility. No one's going to free my mothers from suffering, so I have to be the one to do it. This is the attitude that Shakyamuni, that Prince Siddhartha had when he left the palace and went in search on his quest for enlightenment. That bodhicitta, motivation, was for all sentient beings to be freed completely from suffering. And we will meditate on this for all of our lifetimes until we finally achieve bodhicitta. And there are all these signs that bodhicitta has been achieved, this flame that comes out of the heart and so on. And, you think of it night and day. It's with you all the time. And that leads us to the seventh point, which is bodhicitta, semkye. Jangchubki semkye in Tibetan. And this is the extraordinary wish that every single muscular move, everything I do, is geared towards that goal of becoming a Buddha, to help all sentient beings be freed from samsara and become a Buddha themselves. So this, we say that the Buddha completed both purposes, the purpose of self and other. And so we say, but there's still suffering in the world. Yeah, but imagine that samsara, this world that we're living in, is kind of like all of the Grimm's fairy tales forests out there. And we need to get to the other side of the woods. And if we go into the woods, there are things that are going to kill us and eat us and so on. And Buddha Shakyamuni has taken a machete and hacked away all the way through the woods, and he's on the other side. And it's like, I'm now here, and I've got a path for you to get here now also, yourself. So we have to take it upon ourselves to study, to understand, to change our worldview, to reach higher states of spiritual realization, full of love and compassion for every creature with consciousness that walks this earth, the seen and unseen. And then, when we achieve bodhicitta, that bodhicitta will help guide us to the end, through 10 stages of spiritual development, called the Bodhisattva Bhumis. So you have Marshe, Genso, Yeon Jampa, Nyingji Chenpo, Laksam Namdak, and Jangchubki Semkye. Recognizing all sentient beings have been our mothers. Remember their kindness. Develop the wish to repay their kindness. Develop love for them. Develop great compassion for them. Build this special, responsible thought to become enlightened, to free them. And then bodhicitta, developing the wish to achieve Buddhahood. So I think this is something definitely worth reflecting on regularly.